Maybe we'll ask Dan Hodges. Dan, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
And you probably weren't expecting to be quizzed on the John Lewis ad, but for some reason they've decided to put a John Lewis ad out with no men in it. I don't know if this is the brave new world where you've been now subjugated to a second-class citizen.
It may well be. I wasn't actually aware that I'd been banned from enjoying Christmas by John Lewis, but I mean, it just seems to me. I just think this has to be a deliberate part of the marketing strategy to actually provoke these rows, because we have these arguments and these debates and these controversies just too often now. I just genuinely think there is something in which whoever produced these adverts say, look, you're going to get a bit of controversy, you're going to get a bit of media coverage, you're going to have a minor backlash, but that will be made up in the free coverage you get over the advert. So let's put something like this in, because it's every year now with every one of these campaigns that there's something that is. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'm not in a position to say yay or nay on whether the advert, in my view, is bad or not, because I've got to be honest, I haven't seen it yet. But we just have these controversies so often now. I just can't believe that it's a coincidence.
Yes. No, I think you're probably right. But, I mean, funnily enough, yesterday I was moaning because I discovered, thanks to Sadiq Khan's Twitter page, that the Christmas lights have been lit in Covent Garden and the tree has been erected. And I thought, for heaven's sake, it's only November the 13th. It seems to be getting earlier and earlier. And a lot of people came on and said, you know, don't be such a killjoy, Mike. You know, we're all having such a rough old time dealing with this horrible government and having no money to spend. We want to look forward to Christmas and spend more time doing it.
Well, on that basis, let's put Christmas lights up in June. I mean,
well, that's what I said. Might as well have them all year round.
You know, I agree with you. It's ridiculous. We shouldn't see a single bauble or hear a single carol or see a single Christmas advert until, at a minimum, the 1st of December.
Exactly. No, I think
that's my view. I think the whole thing is completely ridiculous.
I know.
It just makes it removes removes the uniqueness of Christmas. No,
yeah. Well, it also means by the time you get to Christmas Day, you're kind of exhausted by the nonsense of it all, and you kind of go, oh, is this what it was all about then? And we all sit down and have dinner and then fall asleep in front of the television.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we know what it actually is. It's about. It's a lot of companies trying to start making money from us and get the Christmas cash out of us a little bit earlier every year. But as you say, I just think it's completely ridiculous. We shouldn't see anything until the start of December.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's go back to the boring business of politics, because I mean, having had a little detour off into the land of fun and commercial activities, it seems as though business leaders are still pretty unhappy with Rachel Reeves, front page of the Times today, saying that there's going to be job losses, there's going to be higher prices in the shops because she's failed to deliver on her pledge to grow the economy. We sort of knew this, but it's not going away, is it?
It's not, but nor are the politics of it going away, and we discussed this before. I mean, I think there will be a little bit of concern within Number 11, within Number 10, about the growing sort of drumbeat from the business community that this was an anti-business budget. But again, we have to remember what the context and what the framing of the budget was. In the run-up to the budget, the debate was, is this going to be a budget that directly hits and targets working people? And will Labour stick to its pledge in the budget, in its election manifesto, not to directly raise taxes on working people? And once again, whilst no government wants criticism, and Labour's broad strategy and Keir Starmer's broad strategy has been to show he's not as sort of radical and left-wing as Jeremy Corbyn was. As I say, there'll be a bit of concern about that. But ultimately, criticism from business leaders is not going to keep ministers and Labour MPs up at night at the moment. Now,
it's not. But if there doesn't appear to be any growth, then they're going to have to rethink the message, aren't they?
Exactly. That's the thing that will concern them, which is if in 6 months' time or a year's time, people are looking back and see that this budget has in some way curtailed growth, reversed growth. If the economy is seen to be sliding backwards, then Rachel Reeves and Labour are going to have a serious political problem on their hands. But at the moment, as I say, being completely honest, and I've been speaking to a lot of ministers, a lot of MPs about this, a lot of Starmer's advisors, they are not unduly concerned about a criticism from businesses at this stage. But if it does have a negative economic impact, then obviously that's something they'll start to worry about.
Yeah, because they've been banging on about how they're a government for investment. They want investment in the UK. They want to make this green, new economy. They want to try and create jobs. They want to try and create growth. They want money to flood into the country. Well, if the current businesses that are here are saying, well, not only is money not going to be flooding into our businesses, it's flooding out because we're having to pay more in tax, then, that's simply not, the two things don't join up.
No, and obviously, also remember, they spent a good 3, 4, in fact, you could say, a good sort of 10 years hammering the Tories on the failure of growth. And I do remember I can't remember the exact words, but I remember in the election, Rachel Reeves sent out a tweet that I thought, well, you've left a little bit of a hostage to fortune here, Rachel, because she said something about it's something along the lines of not returning to the economic chaos and the economic decline and the boom and bust that we saw amongst amongst the Tory government, and I think in particular amongst Liz Truss. And I remember saying that's a little bit of a risky one there. So no, you're absolutely right. If this does have the impact that business is claiming, let's be honest, we've seen business leaders making these claims before, but if it does have an impact on jobs, if it does have an impact on growth, then Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer and the Labour Party are in trouble.
Yeah, meanwhile, they've got the other fight on their hands, which is the fight against the workless, if you like. I mean, apparently we're not supposed to call people economically inactive anymore because Liz Kendall says it dehumanises them. I mean, there are lots of things that people who are on benefits get called. I don't think being called economically inactive is a particularly bad version of some of the things that get said. But they've got a massive problem, haven't they? Because we've got 2 million people who are on long-term sickness benefit, who are not working. Being called economically inactive surely is not an insult, is it? They're just not active.
No, I'm not. I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, as you said, I'm not entirely sure what the phrasing is supposed to be in this in this context. But obviously, as you said, there's a broader issue beyond the language. I mean, I know that sort of Liz Kendall and Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have discussed this issue. And there is a consensus that something needs to be done about welfare. Yeah. That the welfare bill is
it's
too
huge,
hot.
Isn't it?
Absolutely, but obviously it's a very sensitive issue. And to be honest, it's a politically sensitive issue across the political spectrum. Because I remember in the run-up to the election, if you remember, there was also discussion within the Tory party about some significant moves to reduce the welfare and benefits bill, and actually there was a bit of a backlash in the Tory party. There was a bit of a backlash amongst Tory MPs, and actually not the sort of Tory MPs that you would necessarily expect. I know I remember speaking to a number of the Red Wall Tory MPs representing northern working class constituencies, who were actually saying, do you know what? I'm not sure that should be our priority and our target at the moment. We're going to hit a lot of people who actually need some support at the moment. So it's a complex political issue, but as you say, there's a consensus that the bill is so high now that some sort of action is going to be taken. I do think there is a little bit concern within the cabinet on the Labour backbenches that having a fight on welfare and being seen to be sort of slashing benefits is maybe a fight that they don't need at the moment, given the rocky start that they've had to Keir Starmer's government. But obviously we'll have.
But again, when they're talking about saving money and making tough choices and making difficult choices, it doesn't seem to add up. If you're going to allow the benefits budget to continue to balloon year after year, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, I heard a figure yesterday, which I couldn't quite believe, but I think it was something like 20 million people are now in receipt of some kind of benefit. And I'm not talking about child benefit, I'm talking about universal credit or, some form of benefit which tops up, what they get from actually working. Because a lot of the problem in the benefits business is not people who are not doing anything, but it's people who are working, but their wages are so low that they're having it topped up.
That's the thing. I mean, I think there are two sides to this. I mean, look, we all know there are people in need who, for various reasons, can't work and they need support.
Yeah.
It is, however, just simply unsustainable that we have these levels of welfare and benefits in an economy where I think the unemployment rate is currently running at around 4.5%. I mean, that's just not sustainable. But as you said, it needs to be. I think this needs to be tackled on two sides. I think one is the government is going to have to find ways of introducing savings, but I think equally, employers are going to have to start to pony up. I think a lot of employers actually have been, frankly, if you remember Gordon Brown tax credits, a lot of employers have actually been living off effective.
And it was always a bad idea. I was never in favour of it.
Who have basically been subsidising their profits and incentivising them to keep the wages of their workers low, and that stop. I mean, the other thing also that we need to see is, we've had Brexit, we've supposedly had these sort of controls that were going to be introduced on legal migration. That was supposed to be feeding through to wages in the workplace, and employers were supposed to start paying their workers a decent wage to bring people, to get British workers who didn't want to do specific jobs back into their sectors. So we're going to need to start to see some of that as well.
Let's talk about the Chagos Islands, because a fascinating sort of development yesterday. The I newspaper published a story saying that Donald Trump is more than likely to block the Chagos Islands deal. Turns out that his team obviously been talking to Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage introduced it into the Commons yesterday. Let's have a look.
I can assure you, having been in America last week, knowing also the incoming Defence Secretary very well, there is outright hostility to this deal. Whatever is said about a lease agreement, as we saw with Hong Kong, these agreements can very, very easily be broken. Diego Garcia was described to me by a senior Trump advisor as the most important island on the planet as far as America was concerned. So you're going to find outright hostility. And by the way, when it comes to the Chagosian people, yes, of course, what happened to them was truly awful. They do not wish to live. They're unanimous in this. They do not wish to live under Mauritian rule. They want to live under British rule because they actually trust us. There is no basis for this agreement to continue as it is, and if you do, you'll be at conflict with a country without which we would be defenceless.
The thing that I find fascinating about this situation, Dan, is that clearly any issue that rises between the UK and the US governments, if it reaches Donald Trump's desk, he's going to phone Nigel Farage and say, what do you make of this? And Nigel Farage is going to advise him on what to do, and Keir Starmer is going to be tearing his hair out.
Absolutely. I mean, I said this yesterday. I thought that was actually an incredible moment. You've got what is, everybody acknowledges is a major foreign policy defence strategic issue, a very, very, serious strategic issue, one that's been bedeviling governments of all persuasions for years, if not decades now. And Nigel Farage basically ambushed a lot of them yesterday with what was very clearly a coordinated, he put in a private notice question, was granted one. Yeah. And that coincided with the reports coming out of Washington that Trump and the Trump administration are going to try and reverse this. And I think there are two issues here. There is now a big problem for Keir Starmer and David Lammy and the government, because the whole deal was presaged on assurances, and they made a very big play out of it, that this move had the support of the United States. And if it doesn't have the support of the United States, frankly, I'm not entirely sure how this can move forward. There are, I think, legitimate questions now to be asked about why the deal was put in place.
And again, with such haste, it seemed, a lot of the things that Labour's done.
The US election, when this outcome was, it wasn't so much that it was possible that Trump could win. A lot of people, me included, thought it was odds on he was going to win. There were going to be questions raised about that. But there are also, frankly, and you like him or loathe him, it does actually sort of shine a spotlight on what the next few years are going to be like if Nigel Farage continues to act in this role as disruptor. Because, as I said, he basically showed up the Labour Party, he showed up members of the Conservative Party as well. He's faced criticism. One of the big attacks that we've seen from his political opponents is you know, he's never in Clacton. He's always jumping off to see his mate Donald Trump.
Right. Which is a little bit disingenuous, actually, because he's in Clacton quite a lot, to be honest.
Exactly, and but I mean, it's, you know, the game's the game. It's an attack line. It'll be run. But if he is going to be able to pull, frankly, parliamentary and political stunts like this, then he is going to be giving both the Labour Party and the Tory Party a headache.
Well, he will. Well, because, I mean, I was saying this earlier. Anyway, I was saying this earlier to Theo Usherwood that, you know, basically any time Donald Trump and Nigel Farage have a conversation on the phone, which I presume is every so often, if there's an issue that's come up between the US and the UK, he's going to ask Nigel's opinion. And, you know, he may give an opinion which will disrupt whatever government policy is.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we get sort of further and deeper into the sort of the Trump second term, obviously, you know, Nigel Farage, as we've seen, is a great parliamentary showman, but he doesn't have any actual sort of power or influence within government or to deliver any of America's wider strategic objectives. So in a sense, his influence may slightly diminish as relationships build between the new Trump administration and the new Starmer government. But I think this is an indication of, you know, some people were thinking, well, if Nigel Farage becomes an MP, if people see him sitting on the benches, he'll start to become part of the establishment. He won't be a disruptor anymore. He'll lose his edge and reputation as being a bit of a rebel. I never quite agreed with that analysis, and this is why. I mean, he obviously, you know, if he carries on doing this, he's going to punch above his.
Well, all five of the Reform MPs are getting a lot more attention than anybody thought they would.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually what you've seen is when we had the budget, we had the big sort of when we have the big parliamentary set pieces. We've had some of the attention on the Tory leadership election. I think actually they've been squeezed a little bit. I think over the last sort of month or so they've been pushed into the background. This has put them back on the front pages, and when they were in the background, you could see it in the polls. They start to slide back a little bit. Their gains began to sort of freeze, if you like. I think now, though, I think you know, he's back in the headlines, and I've been saying it. I genuinely believe this. I think it is only a matter of time before we start to see Nigel Farage overtaking the Tories in the polls, and then I wouldn't be completely amazed if at some point we don't see them overtaking Labour as well as we get into midterm, as disillusionment grows with the government, as it is always the case. As the Tories, you know, Kemi Badenoch's going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of internal reorganisation. She's going to have to annoy a lot of people in her own party if she actually wants to start to reposition the Tories. Whilst all this is going on, I think, and you know, as we've seen today, this is the example. I think Nigel Farage is going to make hay over.
Yeah, I think he will. I'm quite looking forward to it. Dan Hodges, thank you very much indeed. Commentator from the Mail on Sunday, of course.